Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're returning, if you're new here, my name is Tori. I normally I normally post planning content on my channel, but I did want to do like a full flip through of my reading journal that I used to use. This is, according to the back, an A6 notebook from Nanami Paper. The Cafe Note. I just got it off of Amazon. It has the, I don't know if it has, I mean, maybe it has, this Tomoe River paper feels more like the Sanzen paper to me than the original, so I'm not quite sure which version it has, so I can't really tell you the specifics on that. Just know that it does have Tomoe River paper. I ended up starting 2023 off with this. Excuse my nail polish. It got smudged. Anyways, and by the end of 2023, I realized I had enough room for like a full year. And I still probably could do another year in here. But I'm kind of tired of the disorganization that I feel when I come to this book, and while I could do like that is enough for another year. And part of me wants to, I'm not gonna lie, part of me is like, girl, you know, you should just finish it out because you're wasting all this paper. And I can use this paper some other way, like I could cut it out, I could do something, I'm not sure. But for now, I am going to be using a different notebook for 2025 because this is just killing my vibe right now. I don't know why, but it is. So I just have some stickers on the front from an Amazon book pack, like a book sticker pack. And then this is from the Coffee Monsters Co. This thing has had coffee spilled on it. It has weathered the storm of many transits. These are more from that Amazon sticker pack. So yeah, and how I usually do a reading journal is based on what I'm feeling like in the moment, and it's heavily borrowing things from other people, so I don't have to think harder. So the beginning looks like this. We're gonna start. Just have my name in the front with another. A lot of these stickers that you'll see are from an Amazon sticker pack that was like book or reading themed. So I have a quote in the beginning that looks messed up because this is supposed to say enlarge, but it looks like enlarge because I didn't make my L large enough, so it looks like the E. But it's supposed to say there are many little ways to enlarge your world. Love of books is the best of all. Jacqueline Kennedy. And these are this is the beginning of the reading log, and I just put the title, the author, and the page that it shows up on in later pages. So I have that. 2023 was better than 2024. I'll tell you that much. And these stickers are from Pen, Paper, and Plans. And then the year ended, so I just put down a sticker from Paper Bits Co., kind of denoting that. And then we go into 2024. I just continued. I had already like drawn these out in 2023, so I continued them, and I had to draw them out again, and I messed up the column sizes, so I flipped it. It's not the best. So, like, do you see already, like, there's some disorganization happening here. Because I wasn't anticipating being in this for 2 years. So, I made a mistake here, and I just used some collaging paper to fix it. And I really liked using my various fountain pens in here. So, that is the end of 2024. I do have, like, 2 or 3 pages that are unused here, and then again, I was trying some new things for 2024, and yeah, I was like, I made it 4 days into the year before I purchased a book. So I was like, you know what? That was my bad. That was on me, okay? So yeah, I just quickly discarded that idea. I didn't even finish the books of the month here, though I do have them in my Hobonichi A5 Hone. I could go back and fill these out, but like that kind of communicates to me how like I get satisfaction from seeing how much I journaled, but I don't get joy in continuing to stay in this book, if that makes sense. So then these were things, this was set up in 2024. This was set up in 2023. And really, I don't know what my thought process was here, because I don't need to buy more books. So why am I making a to buy list? Like, she's unhinged. To be read, this is like a drop in the bucket of what is actually stuff I want to read. So this is basically books that came up in other books or were related to other reads that I had read in 2023 that I wanted to read. So it was just like a dumping ground for like, oh, let me write that down real quick, and then I'll put it in my Goodreads or something, if that makes sense. This one was a 2023 book bracket that I messed up severely and gave up on because I did not care for how it looked. I just don't like it. It looks extremely busy and unnecessary, and I don't like to look at it. I used to have a Pango bookshop, but nobody bought anything from it. I sold like 2 things. And one was a Sarah J. Maas book that I just randomly found. So yeah, was not doing great on that. So I ended up like deleting the app and shutting the shop down, because like this is not even everything that was in the shop. I just never sold anything. So top TBR. Did I get through? I got through some of these, but not necessarily within, not necessarily within the actual 2023 calendar year. I was also doing like a reading challenge thing of this website called the Unread Bookshelf that like this woman made. It was like, read the books that you own. Here's how you can do that. And like, it was several different prompts on how to inspire you to read books that you already have on your bookshelves that you're just not getting to. And I was following with it, but then like the next year she was like, I'm handing this website over to a new owner. And then like I never really heard anything again. So I unsubscribed because I didn't understand what was happening there. So yeah. But basically it was like, figure out a monthly theme and read books that you think fit within that theme. And so I wrote the themes out here and then wrote the titles of what books I thought fulfilled those themes in this spread. And again, it was choose your own theme. So I guess this was her themes that she made. And then this was choose your own theme. So yeah. This was like year-long challenges that she had. And I do like this of like tracking what I read that I actually owned. And if I don't have this in my other book journal, I'll probably add it in. I'll have to go check that. And then a no spin challenge. I think there was like a sticker here and I pulled it up and it took the fountain pen ink with it. It was wild. Like, yeah, I think it was like one of those Avery tabs. So it was like a interesting adhesive situation there. And the calendar was off a day. It was all messy. And I hate like March. I don't think I bought any books in March of 2023, so it can be done. So for 2023, I was trying to go in with a very, very, very simple approach inspired by Helen of the Coffee Monsters Co. But I don't read like she does. So this is all like backlog from, I kept an A5 rings for my reading journal for like 2 minutes because I really just wanted to be in rings, and then finally was like, girl, you want a personal rings. Why don't you just buy a personal rings? So I gave my A5 rings to my sister and took everything out of the A5 rings that I had written about and put it in this book. So that's why these look pretty uniform at first, because all of this is like, I had already read it and made notes on it in a different format. And then this is where I was trying to actually journal. But yeah, I write down quotes and things, but I don't, unless I'm reading a nonfiction book where I want to take notes, or, you know, these are like words that I didn't know. I don't know. This wasn't, like, it worked for the nonfiction books I was reading, but it was not a sustainable style of reading journaling for me, because it felt like I was spending a lot more time transcribing than I was reading. And I want to read. I don't want to be bogged down by what I feel like I have to write down. So here I really tried to pare that back with this read, and then this was another, like, I started this one here, and yeah, I'm just writing quotes. And Murder on the Orient Express was difficult because there were so many characters, and half of it was like, not half of it, but a large percentage of terms were in French, and so I was like, dude, like, these, like, so much. And then I read this children's book that was really cute, and I didn't have much to say. I just had like 2 quotes that I wanted to write down, so I just used the rest of the page for the book cover artwork and some artwork that was in the book itself. So yeah, this is kind of like a happy medium for me. Like, I'm journaling about the book and different quotes, but I'm also like writing down, like, especially if it's a mystery, I was writing down the timeline of events and anything that was referenced that I wanted to note, like it references this painting. And so like that felt like a happy medium of what I want a reading journal to be, of like, if I do have a story I'm really interested in, tracking what happens during the story. But this still is like a lot going on. So eventually I moved to like reading the book and then like journaling afterwards instead of journaling as I was reading, because that's a lot for me. So we have this one, and then I read another nonfiction book. So I was doing that. Then a graphic novel here. This book was another fiction read, but there was a lot of characters and things of that nature, but I really liked the quotes, and this was like a favorite of the year. This one, another one with a lot of quotes that was really good. I was floored by this book. It was called Everything Sad is Untrue, and I recommend it, definitely. Free water, I didn't have a lot, so I focused a lot on quotes, but then also the various community members and characters. There were a lot of them, so I was kind of writing down who they were and how they related to each other. This one wasn't like a favorite read. It had some Spanish that I wanted to write down. But like I know most of that Spanish. So then I read The Catcher in the Rye, and I did want to journal about this one a little bit more in depth because I'd always heard that like a person is a red flag if they've read or if they've read Catcher in the Rye and liked it, but like I don't know where that came from. So if anything, it's like it's more rich white people problems fiction, which everybody loves a good rich white people problems sometimes. Not lately, but sometimes. So yeah, and then I have Dispatches from Pluto. That one was interesting, and I really just focused more on quotes again. I have a mental health read here that I wanted to kind of journal about, but also it was really personal to me, so I kind of taped it together. And then I read a advanced reader's copy of a juvenile book that I had read, and it was heartbreaking and definitely something I'll never quite forget. It had some pretty intense subject matter and quotes that I just was like, I gotta write half of this down. Like, you deserve to exist. If you didn't deserve to exist, then you wouldn't exist. You don't need to feel bad for living, beloved child. I am so happy that you are alive. Even if no one else in the world loved you, you would still deserve to exist. Like, what? I'm like, I want to tear up just thinking about that, because that is something people need to hear. So, yeah. This just had so many quotes. Shame is like a wild brush of thorns. I can't. Oh, it hurts so good. This one was Indivisible. That was a pretty good one too. If You Leave Me, oh my goodness, this book. So yeah, I was very moved by this book. It's historical fiction, and oi mama, it was just so, I don't know, immersive, and I still can't even like put it into words how I feel about this book. It was just heart-wrenching and epic and just so good to me. Like, I loved this book. So yeah, I just have so much. And the ending was so devastating. Oh my gosh. Like, I don't know if I'm like selling this book well, because it was so sad, but it was so good. Oh man. So yeah, that was Never Let Me Go. Or no, that's by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is If You Leave Me by Crystal Hannah Kim. That was like one of my favorite books that I read. This one was Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood. Another really good one. I feel like my favorite kind of literature, the older I get, is like sweeping historical fiction about a female who is like going through it. And not like Kristen Hannah fiction. I'm not a Kristen Hannah person, but like just intense, sweeping, epic journeys of characters who are so multifaceted, and yeah, I don't know what it is. That's a sweet spot of mine that I've recently come to be aware of. Oh, sorry, did not mean to shake you. I do like a good mystery still, and a good thriller, don't get me wrong, but like something about just a female going through it while historical events unfold in the background. That's the good stuff for me. This one had a lot of characters throughout it because it was so like encompassing, and there was a lot of things that were material items that she mentioned. So I wanted to talk about them. Like, she mentions this kind of couch, and she kept using a specific word for it. And I was like, what? Why? Why do you keep using that specific word? So I felt like every time I saw the word, I would forget what it was. So I printed it out, a version of the couch that she was talking about. I think she called it a Davenport. I know that that's a term and it's commonly used, but I don't commonly use it. So I was just like, what? She has this like handbag in the story that she talks about. And of course the cat's eye marble. So yeah, there's a lot here. She references this painting because she's an artist and talks about that. There's just so much here in this book that I really connected with. Maybe men shouldn't have been told about their humanity. It's only made them uncomfortable. It's only made them slyer, trickier, more evasive, harder to read. Forgiving men is so much easier than forgiving women. Like, dang! Ah! Like, I could just stand on a street corner and recite my reading journal quotes, and I would just be like, do not understand! Oh, man. Like, and yet it disturbs me to learn I have hurt someone unintentionally. I want all my hurts to be intentional. Yes, girl! I'm like, dang, there's so much here. Ugh. So, rage can move mountains. In addition, they amaze me. It's shocking and exciting to hear such things emerging from the mouths of women. I begin to think that women I have thought were stupid or wimps may simply have been hiding things as I was. Oh, it's so good. I'm not going to read my reading journal to you. But yeah. Never pray for justice because you might get some. What? Y'all, I'm a dork. I can't help it. I'm sorry. But yeah, I was like, do you know, like, this is one book, Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood. Put some respect on it because she knows what she's doing. Margaret Atwood is most famous for writing Handmaid's Tale, but she's had multiple books turned into series, and she is like one of the greatest writers of our contemporary times. And I would kiss her dirty feet. I would. She is a master. But so then I switched up things. We were reading this for a book club, The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and it's like very atmospheric. There's this house that's like on a cliff, and it's banana pants, and yeah, I found it really, really spooky-ish. Not like scary, but it was giving the good vibes of like a dilapidated mansion, kind of like a Miss Havisham meets Rebecca vibe in a sense. So I really appreciated the way that Sager wrote the setting. These were 2 Christopher Pike books I own that I read for like the first time in forever. I used to be obsessed with Christopher Pike when I was in middle school, and they show their age is what I'll say about that. Alatsaway, fantastic audiobook experience. I really enjoyed reading that. Yeah. It's like a fantasy mystery thriller type of book, but it works with the way it writes about the experience of vampires is like, I've never, how do I say this? And the way this book like writes about vampires and how to essentially kill a vampire is one of the most original things I've ever read. So I liked that book. I'm obsessed with Britney Spears. Leave Britney alone. So I had to write about that. I read this book in one sitting. It was ghostwritten and it was super short, so it was fine. But I'm still gonna write about it. Dreams Lie Beneath by Rebecca Ross. She's more well known for her Divine Rivals duology and A River Enchanted, but this is a YA fantasy that I really, really enjoyed listening to on audio, and it has like a romance plot line, but that does not take up a large, like, that's not the focus of the story. It's more about this girl and her realizing that, like, her father isn't who he says he is, and, like, she's trying to fight back, like, she's trying to fight to regain this identity that she comes to find out she never really had in the first place. So it's a really, really good book, in my opinion. Then I had Dracula. I think I did a reading journal part, like a video of me filling all of this out at one point. This was the first time I'd ever read Dracula, and I found it interesting. It's very, like, I'm terrified of women fiction, which I found amusing, to be honest, because it's like late 1800s, the woman will tempt you into sin type of stuff, and it was a silly, goofy time. I found some fanfic that was, like, actually fan art, excuse me. I'm sure there's Dracula fanfic. I just have not explored that. I found some fan art that was actually pretty accurate to the book itself because I never read it, so I printed that off. Oh my gosh, Tomorrow was such a good read. So good. And its sense of humor was chef's kiss. Man. I adored this book. There's no purity to bearing pain alone. Shut up. It's so good. Oh, man. I am obsessed with this book. This book was so good. It was like a love letter to being a millennial and the kinds of friendships that I feel like are specific to our generation of, like, I don't know. I don't know why I feel that way, but I feel like platonic male-female relationships are more, like, are newer to our society in a way, and came about, like, their common appearance in relationships, I feel like came about along with the rise of the internet, because everybody was kind of put on a level playing field with the internet in a specific way. And I don't say that to say that, like, the internet equalizes everyone, because it most certainly does not. But it's just this interesting study of a male and a female being friends their entire life. And I don't think you really see that in, like, earlier generations, because there was so much focus on man and woman being in romantic relationship with one another, and women were supposed to stay with women and men were supposed to stay with men, and it was weird if you hung out, like, with the opposite sex in a platonic way, I guess. I don't know. Maybe this is just in my head, but I have never really seen frequent depictions of platonic male-female relationships in, like, historical literature. It's usually contemporary. So, but yeah, there's so much to this book. If you have not read it, it's Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. She wrote the storied life of A.J. Hickory. I would recommend. She is a fantastic writer. And I loved this book. So, the next we have is The Book Eaters. This was the first book of 2024 for me, and I really, really loved this book. Essentially, the author found, like, a Reddit thread about somebody saying all vampire fiction has been done and you can't really do anything new, and she kind of took that on as a challenge, where she made these people who consume books for a living, like, that's not a living, but, like, they consume, that is what they eat, like they have to eat books to survive. And it's about this mother who finds out that like her role as a mother and a woman in her specific species and society is not what she grew up being told it was. And when she finally kind of realizes it's not going to change for her, she starts to rebel, and she overthrows like the societal expectations for her role, and like changes her entire community based on her love and her loyalty to her children. And if that ain't badass, I don't know what is. So I loved this book. Okay, I'm trying to speed it up. I'm seeing that I'm like 31 minutes in. I know some of it'll get cut, but I'm not trying to spend an hour flipping through this thing. So, next up we have The Secret History. There's so much here. The Secret History, if you're familiar with it, is like the titular like dark academia book that everybody like cites as the dark academia book. I read it for a book club for the first time. And at first I was really not into it, but then when I started journaling about it, I realized I had a lot to say, and you can see that as well because this entry goes on forever. Let's see. I think, yeah, that's still going. Okay, that is one entry on one book. So, yeah. I didn't realize I had so much to say about it until I reflected upon it and was like, wait a minute. This is actually a genius book. Because at first I was like, why does everybody like this? It's not that big a deal. Like, this is not that great of a book. The characters are not likable. I don't understand why this has gotten so much like cult following. Like, I was very much on the bench of like, The Secret History is overhyped, but I was incorrect. I do not think it's overhyped. I think it is quite a masterpiece, and that's all I'll say there. Assistant to the Villain is this like rompy comedy, romantic comedy that I listened to on audiobook, and it's like a meta thing about like the concept of a villain and what a villain is. And I don't know, I thought it was fun, you know. The Rose Tattoo is a play by Tennessee Williams, and I read it and then watched the movie, and it was a good time. I always forget like how, yeah, I even write it here. I always forget how controversial Tennessee Williams must have seemed in the time period, because he writes about stuff that like you're not thinking a playwright is writing about in like the early 60s. But he has things to say, and he's not afraid to say them. So I always like come to Tennessee Williams forgetting that part, and then I'm always like, oh, this is so scandalous for like a 1960s play. And I'm like, that's the whole point. Like, that was Tennessee Williams. So respect. And then we have The Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons and Flowers and Fatality. I enjoy this series. It's a cozy mystery series that's like set in a university campus in the early 30s, I think 30s, 20s, 30s. And it's like got academia, it's got science, it's got like the cozy vibe of that time period. It's low stakes. The main character is like a consultant to the police. So I enjoy this series, and the audiobook narrator is quite British, and I love to listen to it. Anna Maria and the Fox. This is the first in a series of the, I don't know, it's like a sibling series. There's 3 sisters, so like there's a romance for each sister, but this felt a lot more like history than it did romance. Like, there was a lot about the French invasion of Mexico that was happening while the United States Civil War was happening that I didn't know about, to be honest. So yeah, And then, like, the way that the smutty parts of this book were introduced felt very jarring. I don't know if I was a huge fan because it just came out of nowhere, in my opinion. And the way it was just, like, dropped into the narrative was so, like, I legitimately had to pause the audiobook and rewind it because I was like, you said what now? Like, I was like, wait a minute, what did you just say? And that's how it was, like, brought into the story. It wasn't like, I don't know how you transition gracefully into, like, talking about genitalia, but this author didn't know how to do it. Overall, it was good. It was a good book. I did like it, but, like, yeah, I was very thrown by that choice. This one, Within These Wicked Walls, is like a Jane Eyre YA fantasy retelling that was actually quite interesting as well. I don't think I knew that it was a Jane Eyre retelling until I started listening to it, but it was good. Nothing more to tell. Karen M. McManus is a YA mystery writer that I really enjoy. I have a lot of her books. She writes good characters, in my opinion. House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland was interesting. It was very body gore, in my opinion. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires was the first book by Grady Hendrix I've ever read, and what have I been doing with my life? This was such a smart, like, Grady Hendrix writes smart horror. It's horror that says something about society that's not so on the nose. I mean, it is on the nose, but it's not at the same time. Like, you have that surface level stuff that you're like, that's why the horror's been made into a horror, because, like, it's these dichotomies between, like, housewives and what they're expected to do versus what happens in their day-to-day, and, like, essentially this is like housewives fighting vampires, and 10 out of 10 cannot recommend this enough. And it's like Steel Magnolias, but with vampires. Like, 10 out of 10. Like, one of the quotes, "You'd rather get stabbed 41 times than ruin the curb appeal of your home?" Mary Ellen asked. "Yes," Grace said. Okay. If you're going to murder your best friend with an axe, you should make sure you know what you're doing. Okay? Okay. "Don't worry, Grace," Patricia said. "When we go off, we'll be fully cocked." I just... So good. So good. That Pinson Girl is by Jerry Wilson. She's actually native to Mississippi, and I got to meet her. And this was another book that was like one of those historical fiction about a female who's going through it, and I was here for it. Like, yes, let me sign up for this. And I don't know, I just really liked the book. It was devastating and heart-wrenching, and I'm about that kind of literature at times. Another one that's devastating and heart-wrenching is A Woman Is No Man by Itaf Room. This book is about 3 generations of a Palestinian family who had moved to, I think, the United States. And it's like a saga in how women are so mistreated and the violence enacted upon their bodies and their existences to ensure that they stay, I guess, submissive and they stay in their place, but also how the various ways they fight to get out of that through, like, it's I don't think I can sell this book really well. It's just extremely intense. The main character of it is a young girl, and it, like, you see it through her mother's point of view and her grandmother's point of view, and her mother actually was murdered by her father. So yeah, it's heavy, but it is very, very, very good. Like, books were my armor. Everything I'd ever learned growing up, all my thoughts, dreams, goals, experiences, it all came from the books I read. Oh, why would anyone want to be a woman when she could be a bird? Yeah, that was a lot. So, Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano was like a campy horror book that didn't really end up making a lot of sense. Like, the plot lines didn't follow through. So, yeah. My next Donna Tartt book was The Goldfinch, and it was another one that I was having a hard time getting into, and then by the time I was done, I was like, this is a masterpiece, and I feel like I have hit a trend with Donna Tartt. She takes a long time to convince me of what she's doing, and then when she does, I am sat and I am seated and I am so mind blown. I don't know how she does it, but yeah. So, The Goldfinch, also 10 out of 10. Then I had Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. It's like a sci-fi time travel type of fiction. That was interesting. It was like, I don't know if you've seen that movie with Amy Adams. I think it's called The Arrival, maybe. It reminded me of that book, but not in the same sense of like aliens, but like with the time loop that was happening. So, next up, I read Dead Dead Girls by Nikisia Afia. And I just had like a little snippet here because I found I found it kind of cut and dry, and I was hoping for more, and I didn't really feel like I found it. The Earth Dragon Awakes was one of the first books I read for 2024. The Earth Dragon Awakes is a juvenile historical fiction about like one of the massive earthquakes to hit California in the early 1900s. Then again, Maybe I Won't is a Judy Blume that I think has been banned, but I think it's definitely a realistic portrayal of a preteen boy. Not always appropriate thoughts going on there, so I could definitely see how it's gotten some flack, but I think it's a very realistic and relatable depiction of what preteen boys go through. So everything here is so beautiful. Oh my gosh. This one was Devastation Nation. It's about two sisters. One sister has some mental health issues, and the other sister is like struggles with the role she has to take on as her sister's caregiver, essentially, and like kind of rejects that role. And you follow the two siblings, mainly the sister with the mental health issues, she's never actually given like a straightforward diagnosis, but you know, it's something along the lines of bipolar 2 disorder or schizophrenia, and how that plays out over her lifetime. And it is heartbreaking and funny and relatable at times. There's a lot about immigration here because the sister who struggles with her mental health ends up having a baby with an illegal immigrant who struggles to stay within the country because he's always terrified he's going to get apprehended. And then he eventually decides to take their baby back to his home country, and the sister follows him, and it's a sweeping story again of a girl going through it. And I love those kinds of stories. So, Never Saw Me Coming. This one is banana pants. I enjoyed it for what it was. It's a story about a girl who has been diagnosed as a psychopath, and she's going to a college that pays her tuition because she's in a study cohort with other psychopaths, and like she's also attending that college so that she can kill somebody. It's like silly goofy. And then I have some other entries here by books that were just like meh for me. And No One Can Know by Kate Alice Marshall. I read this in one sitting, and it was brain candy. I ate that up. The Leftover Woman, also read in one sitting. And if you like Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, you'll like this one. 10 out of 10 for that. Definitely liked it a lot. Had a lot of quotes. It's like quite a short book, but it had some quotes that I was like floored by. Apple Black was a manga that I read by, I think it's Odunsi Oguo. I think I could be pronouncing that incorrectly, but I really, really like this concept, and I would eventually like to read more. And this one is actually a children's book by Julie Edwards. You may know her as Julie Andrews. I wanted to read this because how could you not? So I read that and had some thoughts about it. And then here is when I started reading the Bridgerton books in preparation for Bridgerton Season 3. So I read The Duke and I, The Viscount Who Loved Me, An Offer from a Gentleman, and Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. And I feel like if you don't know, I don't need to tell you what those were about, to be honest. Next is Salt and Broom, another Jane Eyre retelling that was more, it honestly felt more like Jane Eyre than Jane Eyre did. So, but in this one, the Jane Eyre character is like a witch. Yeah, it was good. This one is Her Final Words by Brianna Labuskis. This was interesting in that it followed this crime that happened in this community that doesn't believe in modern medicine. So that was interesting. This one is Some of Tim's Stories by S.E. Hinton, but there's so much here. I could like practically transcribe the book and still not have enough written. So I want to reread it and really like parse my thoughts on it. So that's how that looks because I haven't reread it yet. Some children's books that I read from my collection at my library, Speak Up and Swim Team. Both good graphic novels if you have a graphic novel reader at home. Banyan Moon, another one of a girl going through it. We love to see it. It was a good book. Anne Hutchinson, a random children's biography that taught me a lot about her that I didn't know. Yeah. I'm actually really glad I read that because I didn't know much about Anne Hutchinson at all. She is a like a Puritan colonial figure in that time period of the United States history. Remarkably Bright Creatures. I was like, is it overhyped? I gotta listen to it because everybody and their mom seems to be talking about this book. Can confirm, not overhyped. 10 out of 10. Opening Bell. Story about a female Wall Street stockbroker who takes on a lot of the traditionally male roles within her household and definitely pays the price for it. What Never Happened. Kind of like a COVID-19 horror, essentially. It was alright. This one was La Grande Therese, the greatest scandal of the century. Essentially, homegirl kept lying her way through life to get money, and nobody thought to check her on it. So, I don't know if it's the greatest scandal. More so of, like, nobody had, like, basically, she was born at the right time for her personality because none of the checks and balances of like a police force or financial institutions were like solidified yet, so she was able to get away with a lot. She eventually got caught and hid out in Spain until she died. The Pocket Wife. This one was like The Girl on the Train, but better. So The Trees Crept In and The Trees Crept In. This was very like nature gore, if that's a thing. And I found the ending to just fall flat for me. And then I just did a recent reading journal video about these stories. So I've talked about them. I'll put that video in the cards if you're interested in seeing. I didn't talk about this one. This one was a young adult romance called Every Time You Go Away. And y'all, I will repeat, Every Time You Go Away by Abigail Johnson. That's what it looked like. This is the most intelligent romance I have ever read. Like, there's no miscommunication trope. When something happened, the characters stopped to talk about it. And if they couldn't come to a resolution, they eventually, like, they walked away and then came back to it later. The healthiest depiction of romance I've ever seen in a book. Like, there's disability representation. There's a storyline about a parent with substance abuse disorder. 10 out of 10. Like, please go read this book if you want to see a very healthy romance. Every Time You Go Away by Abigail Johnson. The Firekeeper's Daughter, 10 out of 10. Indigenous author, writing Indigenous generational trauma, mystery, about the effects of, like, being an Indigenous person in today's society and what that looks like, and how trauma is inherited and passed on. Really good. But yeah, I am remembering I already told you about this. So that is the end. In the back here, I have book lists. This is a sticker from Planner Monkey Co. This is her Maisie character. I have the 70 best coming of age books of all time. And I just highlighted the ones that I've read. And then 100 books everyone should read. Best books of all time, I guess. And this was me, again, highlighting the books I've read. I haven't read a lot of them that I know I need to read. So if you see one that I haven't read and you're like, oh my gosh, I know. This is Esquire's 50 best mysteries of all time. And I've read like 5 of them. And then I just have like a few pages in the back. So yeah, that is my reading journal from 2023 to 2024. I bought this notebook on Amazon. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I did use a lot of different various fountain inks in here. So if you have a question about any of those, feel free to drop them in the comments below and I can figure out which one I was using and send you a direct link if you're into that. Otherwise, if you made it this far and you haven't already left and you're not subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.